Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, for this live stream, I'm going to talk about some disturbing developments in this Ahmaud Arbery case. There are several things that have happened in this case. It's been a while since I've talked about this case, and I just want to share my views about this situation with you. I hope that you all can tune in. I want to thank everyone that is subscribed to this channel. I want to thank the people that are watching this particular video. I truly appreciate your support. So there's several things that I want to cover in this live stream. I want to talk about how potential jurors were granted access to information that they shouldn't have been granted access to. I'm going to talk about the selection of the jury. I'm going to talk about some controversial remarks made by one of the defense attorneys in the case. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the racial nature of this case. You have had some people, some conservative commentators, for instance, like Candace Owens, basically suggest that this case has nothing to do with race, which is completely false. And I plan to go into detail about that. Shout out to Water Sniper. Thanks for tuning in. And please let me know if you have any problems with, problems with the audio or the visual. Please let me know if there's problems with, it not coming through or buffering. Please let me know about that. So let's get right into it. One of the first disturbing things about this case was the fact that the court website had information on it that the public had access to while the jury selection process was taking place. So a lot of potential jurors had access to information that was suppressed by the court. Information such as Ahmaud Arbery's mental health record, also his criminal record. And this stuff is very important. This is something that may have a detrimental impact on the case. Since that information was exposed, the court apparently cut the links so that people can't access the information. But the fact of the matter is, there is a potential that some of those jurors on that jury had access to this information. And the reason why that is very important is because it is prejudicial. We know that often when people try to bring up criminal records of someone, or they try to bring up their mental health records and history and all that kind of stuff, that type of information can be used to dehumanize the person, to make it so that a jury is less sympathetic towards that particular victim. And we have to remember that obviously Ahmaud Arbery was the victim in this case. This brother was jogging in a neighborhood, and these people chased him down, hunted him down like you would hunt a deer or some other kind of wild animal, and shot and killed this brother for no reason at all other than the fact that he was Black. That is the only reason why these white men proceeded to follow this brother and kill this brother, because of the color of his skin. And we'll go into that a little bit later. We'll talk about how this is obviously a racial case. It's not just, some case of someone trying to prevent a crime or anything like that. This case is all about race, and that can never be forgotten. So you have these jurors, they have access to his criminal record, even though that was suppressed by the court. They had access to his mental health records. And it's possible that that may taint some of the jurors and make them biased against this brother, make them less sympathetic towards the fact that this brother was shot and killed by, these two men, these two white racist men. Another disturbing development in this case, and it's one of the most obvious, is the fact that they have a virtually all white jury. There's only one Black person on this jury. And this is odd given the fact that Black people make up 26% of the people in Glenn County, Georgia. And that's where this case is taking place. And white people are 69% of the population there. It is very disturbing that here you have a controversial case that involves race, and yet and still you have only one black juror, even though black people make up 26% of the population. And many people are comparing this case to the Emmett Till trial. You all know that the Emmett Till case is a fundamental case in American history. It's a case where a young black boy was lynched by some white racists for allegedly whistling at a white woman. This brother's body was beaten beyond recognition. And in that case, despite all the evidence that was presented, that jury acquitted those killers. And people are very concerned that we may have a similar situation here where a virtually all white jury, just like the all white jury in the Emmett Till case, allowed killers to get away with lynching a black man. So we have that situation. We have that modern day comparison. And it is outrageous that we would have a virtually all white jury under those circumstances. Here we are in 2021, after the election of a black president, after the election of a black vice president. Here we are still in the state of a racist country. And we can never lose sight of that. We can never lose sight of the reality that we face as a people. Shout out to John Pro. Thanks for tuning in. So yeah, it's very disturbing. And the thing that's even more disturbing about this is that this is a deliberate process. It's not a situation where, that's just how the jury turned out. You had the defense attorneys in this case using preemptory strikes to remove black jurors from this case, to deliberately remove black jurors from the case so that black people cannot have an influence on the outcome of this particular trial. That was a deliberate effort. And even the judge said that, it appears to be intentional discrimination going on in the process. But under the law, particularly in Georgia, if someone is able to offer an excuse for their conduct, if they're able to offer a legitimate, quote unquote, non-discriminatory reason, reasonably related to a specific reason outside of race, then they're able to just strike jurors based on their race. They're able to strike jurors and just come up with some cockamamie excuse as to why they decided to strike all those black jurors from the jury. And in this particular case, the judge decided, well, he's not going to go behind that, and he's not going to question what they have said, what the reasons that they have proffered for why they took all these black jurors off of the jury. And this is very disturbing, man. It is very disturbing that you had these attorneys strike all the black jurors from the jury except for one. So it's going to make it challenging to get a conviction in this case. And that brings me to a couple of other points, dealing with jury selection. First of all, this whole situation is just another reminder how important it is for people to exercise their right to vote. And it's important for a couple of reasons. The first reason, the most immediate reason is that voter registration rolls are one of the ways that they select jurors for, that they use to select potential jurors. So it is very important that all of us be registered to vote, that all of us exercise our right to vote. Because when you are registered to vote, your name is a potential name that goes into the pot, the jury pool. You're a potential juror in these very important cases that deal with our people, that deal with race and racism in this society. It's important to take the jury duty seriously. A lot of times people try to avoid serving on juries. A lot of times people don't respond to jury summonses. This is a reminder of how important it is for us to take that whole thing seriously, because it has an impact on whether or not there is justice in this country. We have every opportunity to be on those juries, and we need to take that opportunity seriously. Even though in this situation you had Black people that were a part of the jury pool taken out. And another reason why like voting is so fundamental in this case is because this particular judge that made this decision to allow these attorneys to strike all these Black jurors, this attorney was appointed by an elected official. He was appointed by the governor of the state. When you vote for your governor, you have some kind of impact in many states on what kind of judges you have on the bench in that particular state. And that's fundamentally important because it determines, whether or not we have justice as a people, whether or not we have judges that have a good civil rights record, that are concerned about our issues and about justice for Black people, whether we can find out if they're concerned about police brutality. What is their position on these very important issues that affect our fundamental rights? And this is not only on the local level, the state level, but it's also on the federal level. Elections determine who will be the president, and it's the president that appoints or nominates judges to the Supreme Court. That's why this stuff is very important. Often, a lot of times we are the ones that elect the prosecutors. If you had like the first prosecutor in this particular case was not even inclined to bring charges in the case, wasn't even inclined to bring charges. And it was a new prosecutor that had to be brought in to bring the charges. And it took them like months before charges were filed after this brother was killed, shot and killed by these racist people. So, those are things that are very important when it comes to this jury selection piece. Because I doubt, I am very concerned about whether or not there will be justice in this case when you have a predominantly white jury in a southern state. A state that has a long history of lynching Black people, killing Black people, of disenfranchising Black people, taking Black people's civil rights, preventing Black people from exercising basic civil and human rights in this country. That's the history of Georgia. That's what Georgia, Georgia is one of the racist, most racist states in this country based on its history, both current, past history and current reality. So you had, a jury pool that is predominantly white, predominantly Southern, predominantly Republican, based on the information that I saw, like this particular county voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, a known racist, a known white supremacist, a man who pandered to white supremacists. So that tells you what kind of jury pool we're dealing with here. That tells you what kind of jurors are on this jury, potentially, Trump supporters. So, I'm very concerned, because even if you have a lot of evidence, it's very possible that a jury such as this may not even consider this evidence. And I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that these jurors look at the evidence and evaluate this case from an objective point of view. So you had those situations. And then the most recent thing that happened in this case is very disturbing, and I have to talk about is, statements made by one of the defense attorneys in the case. This defense attorney, a white man, was complaining about Al Sharpton being in the courtroom. And it wasn't just him complaining about Al Sharpton being in the courtroom. This man literally said he doesn't want any more Black pastors in the courtroom. That's what he literally said. No more Black pastors in the courtroom. And he was concerned that Al Sharpton's presence was intimidating the jurors. That's what he said. And it is just insane that a lawyer would be able to make such a racist statement before a court without any kind of condemnation from the court, without much outrage or much issue being raised about it. It's just insane. And that's clearly racist, because this man didn't say that he has a problem with pastors in general being in the court. He was very specific. He said black pastors being in the court. You know, he mentioned Jesse Jackson. He mentioned Al Sharpton. He said black pastors being in a courtroom. That's obviously racist. And the implication there is that he may not have a problem with a white pastor being there. And this is taken, you know, these comments are being made in a highly racially sensitive case, a case that, and highly racially charged case. And you had his white lawyer making these kind of statements. And, you know, the thing that I have to say about this is, you know, this is another reminder just how important it is for Black people to be in these courts, in these spaces, in these people's faces, in order for us to have justice. We need to have more people in these courtrooms supporting these families, standing beside these families. You got all these haters, you know, all these people that got so much to say about Al Sharpton, so much to say about Jesse Jackson, always critical of those who are actually doing the work. Like that, you got that Tariq Nasheed buffoon, you know, doing videos, making mockery of Al Sharpton and stuff. But the fact that this lawyer feels intimidated by Al Sharpton, feels intimidated by Jesse Jackson, speaks to the continuing relevance of people like a Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton, despite what all these haters say. You know, these people that are critical, they have so much to say about people like a Al Sharpton. These critics aren't doing the work often. Often these critics just sit back in the luxury of their mansions doing videos while people like a Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson are in the streets with the people. They are standing beside the families, risking their freedom and stuff like that, risking going to jail, speaking out boldly against police brutality, not in the comfort of their home, not in the comfort of being behind some video screen, but actually in real life in the streets with the people. You know, many of these critics that have so much to say, they are not organizers. They don't organize anything but premieres for their movies and their projects to stack up paper for their own self-interest. They are Black power entertainers. They don't do the work. They don't participate in protests. They don't lobby for anything. They don't produce any kind of substantive change. All they give you is feel-good rhetoric. Whereas these other people are actually trying to do things to make a difference in these families' lives and also for society in general, pushing for the reforms that we need to see in terms of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. So yeah, I mean, that was very disturbing to hear those remarks. So I had to address that. Another thing that I want to talk about is, you know, just the racial nature of this particular case. You know, one of the things, and I will get to your comments. Thanks for everyone, you know, to everyone that's tuning in. The other thing that I want to address is just the racial dynamics of this case. You know, here you have a situation where a young Black man is jogging in a neighborhood. Now, you had some people accusing him of committing a crime. You know, they said that he was burglarizing a home. That was something that some of these people put out here. They said that he was robbing, you know, a house, taking things. But there is no evidence of that. On the stand, you have witnesses testify that there was no evidence whatsoever of Ahmaud Arbery stealing anything from that house. And just for people that don't know the situation, there's a house that's under construction in that particular neighborhood. You know, these vigilantes, these white supremacist racists that tracked this brother down, accused Ahmaud Arbery of robbing the house or stealing something, and there was no evidence of him stealing anything. He didn't have anything in his hands at the time when he was jogging from the house. And there's video footage of several people going into that house at different times. In fact, the owner of the house put up cameras and he observed that many people would go into that house during daytime hours, just out of curiosity. You know, a lot of times people will go into a place out of curiosity. So you had all these white people going into that house, but they weren't followed. They weren't tracked down. They weren't killed or anything. They weren't harassed like the brother Ahmaud Arbery was. And that speaks to the racism that I'm talking about. And you had some white kids going to that house, two white boys going to that house and steal wood from that house, from that area. You didn't see these same white men track those white boys down. You didn't see them follow those white boys. You didn't see them stop those white boys, point a gun at those white boys, kill those white boys because they're white boys. That's just the reality of the situation, and we want to ignore that. You know, again, you have people like, you know, these apologists for white supremacies, these excuse makers for white supremacy, trying to suggest that this had nothing to do with race. If it had nothing to do with race, why was Ahmaud Arbery the one hunted and killed like an animal when all these other people were able to go in and out of this house without issue, without any problems at all? Again, you know, this brother did not commit any crime according to all the you know, the video cameras that were at the house didn't observe him, you know, taking anything from that house. No witnesses observed him taking anything from the house. But these people felt entitled. They felt that they had the right to exercise some kind of citizen's arrest. They felt that they had the right to kill this brother, to lynch this brother based on their suspicions that he had committed some crime. And unfortunately, in this society, black skin makes people inherently suspicious. They're viewed as inherently criminal. It's a badge of criminality in the minds of these white supremacists in this country. Just like it was a badge of criminality in that Trayvon Martin situation. Here you got a brother leaving a store, minding his own business, and you got some some white Hispanic man tracking his brother down, saying that he was suspicious and he looked like he was up to no good. And that's the same mentality of these McMichaels that killed this young brother, Ahmaud Arbery. Killed him. You know, and they described the graphic detail. In one report that I read or heard about, they said that his arm, he had been shot in his arm, and his arm was almost detached from his body because of the extent of his injuries. So you had that situation where, you know, all these other people were able to go in and out of that house with no problem, no issue. But yet and still, this brother was tracked down like an animal, hunted like an animal. Another thing that has to be pointed out is that, according to one of the witnesses, after Travis McMichael shot and killed this brother, Ahmaud Arbery, he uttered the words "fucking nigger." That's what he said. That's what this killer said. That's what this white supremacist had to say. And, you know, this witness was asked whether or not this Travis McMichael uses the N word, and he responded that he uses it. He's used it many times. You know, that's what one of the witnesses said, that this guy Travis McMichael uses the N word many times. And then another thing that came out, you know, based on the evidence that I've heard so far, you know, in reading about this case, is that The father, George McMichael, described hunting down Ahmaud Arbery and, getting to the point where he was able to, they were able to catch him or whatever. They described Ahmaud Arbery as a trapped rat. That's the way they described this brother, as a trapped rat. And that's part of the dehumanization process. That's what racists do in order to rationalize their brutality, in order to be able to go forward with their brutality and their cruelty. They have to dehumanize their victim. And what better way to dehumanize somebody than to refer to them as a trapped rat? That's how they viewed this brother. A young black life is viewed on the same level as a trapped rat. And we know that rats are viewed as pests in society. Nobody loses any sleep over a dead rat. Nobody loses any sleep if a rat is trapped, if his head is snapped, unless you're like an animal rights person. But many people don't lose any sleep over that. They say good riddance when they see a dead rat that's been ran over in the street, or a dead rat that's trapped in a trap or something like that. And unfortunately, that's how they view the black man. Some of these racists, like these people, like this George McMichael, they view that black man as a rat. They see him as a rat in a trap. His life has zero value in their minds. In their twisted, distorted, racist minds, his life has no value. They have more compassion for a rat than they do a black man. So seeing that brother lying in his blood in the streets, in their mind was nothing but like seeing some roadkill, something like that. They couldn't care less. In their minds, as Travis McMichael said, he was just a fucking nigger the way they saw him. That's the way they saw this brother. And we see that this dehumanization process is a part of history. They did the same thing to the Jewish people during the Holocaust. They had propaganda films equating Jews literally with rats to dehumanize them. When you dehumanize a people, it is easy to massacre the people. It is easy to commit acts of genocide. And that's what happened with the Jews. And unfortunately, that's what's happening and what has happened to Black people. There's been a long history of people dehumanizing and devaluing Black lives. There was a time when, they had these images that depicted Black people as subhuman, as ape-like creatures, as the missing link between man and monkeys and stuff like that. That's how they view Black people. And unfortunately, that's the way they continue to view Black people. Like here you had the example of former President Obama and his family. Here you have an educated Black man, a Black man that went to the best law school in the country, Harvard, was president of the Harvard Law Review, a man that was a U.S. senator, an accomplished author before he even became president. All these accolades and all these achievements, but in the minds of the white racists, in the minds of those Tea Party fanatics, in the minds of those birthers and hate mongers, this man and his family were nothing but monkeys in their minds. And we've seen the pictures depicting them, the first family as chimpanzees and monkeys and all that kind of stuff. That's how these people view us. Our life has no value. And, I'll be damned if I'm going to be silent in the face of this. There's no way in hell I'm going to be silent. It's all right to talk about the celebrity stuff every now and then, to have fun with that stuff. But we need to use our voices here on YouTube to bring attention to these types of issues. It's all right to talk about relationships and all that kind of stuff. That stuff has its place and its relevance. But let's talk about the things that actually matter, like our lives, the lives of our young Black men. Let's talk about that for a change. Let's use our voice to mobilize the people for action, not to mobilize people to buy your products, not to mobilize people to buy your latest film project or your t-shirts or your latest race hustle. Let's use our voices to mobilize the people to take to the streets. And you have people on the ground there that are protesting every day outside of that courthouse. And we need even more people to be there. If you live in that area, you should be at that courthouse in those streets voicing your opposition to this. Because when the people are not in the streets, when the people stand back, that's when injustice takes place. That's when they feel that they can dispense with this Black life and, get rid of, allow these people to walk away scot-free, to walk away with killing a Black man, a young Black man who had committed no crime whatsoever, a young unarmed Black man that didn't pose a threat. They can get away with killing people like that if we don't make our opposition known, if we don't use our voices and mobilize and organize. They, will allow the injustice to take place. We have to remember that it wasn't until after the people raised all kinds of hell, after that videotape was released, that charges were brought against these people, against these damn killers, against this lynch mob. It was only after the people stood up and took to the streets that they took issue and, decided to take the case seriously. Before then, you had some buffoonish prosecutor that didn't even take the thing seriously. That wasn't even considering bringing any kind of charges against these people for killing this brother. They were making, a prosecutor making excuses for these damn killers and racists. It's the people that made a difference. And it's the people that have the potential to make a difference here. It was the people that made a difference in that George Floyd case. It was because of the marches, the protests all around the country and all around the world that you had some kind of justice in that case. And that's what we need to do. We need to be out there in these streets, making our voices heard. The trial, from what I understand, this case continues next week. The people need to be out there in numbers. All these civil rights organizations need to be out there in numbers. If ever there was a case for the civil rights community to make their voices heard, this is that case. It'd just be an outright injustice if these people were able to walk away from this and get away with killing this brother. That would be an outrage. That would be an absolute right outrage. So somebody asked, what do I mean by race hustle? I'm talking about those people that aren't really concerned about the movement. I'm talking about those people that are only in it for their own financial benefit. That's what I'm talking about. People that sell you things, that want to sell you products, that are using a race to enrich themselves when they're not really doing anything to change the situation. These same people, they speak out against protesters. They don't organize any kind of protest. They don't organize any kind of lobbying. All they organize is an audience around promoting themselves and their finances. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about race hustlers. These people speak out against voting. They say you shouldn't vote. They don't lobby for anything. All they do is give you rhetoric and they keep people high on rhetoric and low on actual substance. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about when I say that. And I've mentioned the names. People can watch the playback of some of the names that I mentioned. But yeah, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I just had to talk about this particular subject, and I may be back on here with another live stream talking about something lighter, dealing with some issues of dealing with relationships and stuff like that. Again, there's a time and a place for that, but we need to use our voices to address these types of issues. This very important case. And my question is, like, for these thugs out here, man, these people that have so much energy when it comes to going at their own people. They're quick to shoot a brother. They're quick to speak out against a brother. Like I saw this meme, this image, where it talked about how some black people are when it comes to dealing with each other. They're that ferocious lion that you see in the jungle when it comes to dealing with their own people, when it comes to going hard against their own people. They have all this anger, all this courage and rage against their own. But when it comes to dealing with the oppressor, when it comes to dealing with the system that oppresses our people, these same people become like the cowardly lion from the Wizard of Oz. That's how they become. Where are these soldiers in these situations involving injustice? Where are these soldiers to put in the work in these types of situations? And I'll just leave it at that. So I'm going to go through your comments. Shout out to Def Rocker. I haven't talked about that Rittenhouse case yet. I'm going to look into that. One thing that I noticed is that he took the stand. And I'm just going to talk about it real briefly here. I'm going to do more research on the case, and I'll probably do a video about that as well, like maybe later on this weekend. But yeah, the latest thing that I saw in that case is you had, Rittenhouse take the stand, and he started fake crying and all this and that. I'm very concerned about that case. Like, I think that there's a chance that man may actually get away with murdering those protesters, based on how they're painting the case. They're painting him as some kind of victim who was defending himself. And then he takes the stand and has these fake tears. He's sounding like he's crying, but when you look at him, I don't see any tears. His face is completely dry. So I plan to talk about that, but I'm not going to go all into detail about it right now. So shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to Water Sniper. Shout out to John Pro. Yeah, so John Pro said, I find it odd that all these different cases are going on at the same time. Race is a real issue in our country. Yeah, it's always been an issue, unfortunately. Despite some of this progress that we're making in society, race continues to be an issue, unfortunately, man. It's like you can have all these Black elected officials, some of these Black billionaires and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, in the minds of many people in this country, Black people are just the N-word. That's all we are in their minds. And the election of Donald Trump is a reminder of what this country is and about the true nature of like a lot of people in this country. So yeah, unfortunately, that's the situation. So RR said they never received a jury summons. And I don't know. I'm curious as to how long you've been a registered voter, and based on your age, like if you're real young, and I can't really tell. If you're real young, then I can understand. Like I've been summoned to a jury. I've received many jury summons just in my time here in Baltimore. I've received quite a few, and I always report, but they're unlikely to select an attorney to be on a jury. And that's usually the case. I've never been selected to serve on a jury. I've been called, to be a part of a jury pool, but no one's ever selected me. Um, yeah, I mean this. Yeah, like RR said, this case is obvious. It is like a hate crime. That's what this is, because this brother was only targeted because of his race. And then you have all these racial remarks made by uh, the killer. The killer, referred to him again as a effing N word. That's what he referred to Ahmaud Arbery as. And then you have, these people describing him as a trapped rat after this brother is killed. Yeah, and somebody pointed out that the R&R pointed out that the attorney doesn't want the media attention associated with Al Sharpton or Reverend Jesse Jackson. Exactly, because you know, once they're involved, that does generate attention. That means that they can no longer ignore the case. Like the media, the mainstream media, they can't ignore the case. And there has been some reporting on the case. Like I'm not going to say that the media hasn't reported on the case, because they have. On CNN they've talked about the case, on other major networks, and just preparing for this particular live stream, I looked at many news articles. So it is being discussed, but it deserves more attention than it's actually getting right now. Yeah, and it's really disturbing. Like apparently they had like images, that they showed the jury of, just how horrific this, crime was, graphic photos and stuff like that. It's really sad. And as somebody pointed out, obviously his mom, when she saw those photos and images, she broke down. And I also read that one of the jurors, the images were so horrible that one of the jurors actually had to cover their face with a notebook so that they didn't have to look at that. So Def Rocker said that he once walked through a house that was under construction. And I remember as a kid, like playing on, even though it's dangerous, like I played near on some stuff that was under construction and stuff like that. So we know a lot of people are drawn to that stuff. Um, and so let me go through your comments a little bit further. Oh, so somebody mentioned that Kwame Brown is from that particular area, and he has all these subs, and he hasn't mentioned the case. Yeah, that's unfortunate, man. Like, like, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the guy that was going off on all those black people. Again, that speaks to the whole ferocious lion versus the cowardly lion, man. It's like got all this energy for all these black people. Just like people here on YouTube, like you got this group of people that love to just do videos back to back, attacking each other, tearing each other down, doxing each other. But where are the docs on these killers that are killing our people, man? Where's that energy for those people? Um, yeah, man, it's just messed up. Yeah, so Talking and Grubbing Media said, what about the defense? You know, basically you're asking like, what is it about Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton that intimidated these defense attorneys? And I think somebody already spoke to that, and it would be the media attention, and also just the fact they claim that they feared that they would intimidate the jury just by their presence and stuff. But that's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any kind of sense. It's not intimidating a jury and stuff by having some civil rights activists in the courtroom. That's not intimidating anybody. That's just letting them know that there are people that are concerned about what is happening in this case. Yeah, so yeah, so somebody mentioned something about Tariq Nasheed, and I'm not going to go into that in this particular video because I don't want it to be all about him. But you all know what I said earlier. You know my views on that particular issue. And the thing is, I will say one more thing about that, like these fakers and race hustlers. It's like those kind of people detract from the movement. Not only are they critical of the actual movements, where people are actually doing the work, they actually help the enemy in many ways by, calling into question, the legitimacy of real organizations that are actually doing the work. And also, when these people like profit off of, incidents dealing with race, it makes people question whether or not these incidents are real or whether or not they deserve the attention that they're getting and stuff like that because of these fakers out here, these hustlers that don't give a damn about the people. All they're doing is looking for the next opportunity to come up on some money. Because you will see them go from one hustle to the next hustle. So somebody said, why didn't Ahmaud Arbery stop running and explain himself to the McMichaels? If somebody is chasing you, some strangers, I mean, like, make this make sense. Like, you got some strangers chasing you with guns drawn. Some white racists chasing you with guns drawn. Would anybody in their right mind think it was a good idea to stop and let these people catch you and try to talk to these people, reason with these people, when they automatically view you as a suspect? And, that's one thing that I wanted to mention. It was because of the work of the civil rights organizations on the ground in Georgia that you had a repeal of that citizen arrest law that these people used as an excuse to do what they did. I think that is positive development. That's a great development. And that's something that needs to be highlighted and celebrated and stuff. And that's another example of how these things actually matter, how protests matter, how activism matters, how advocacy matters. Because without that law in place, these people wouldn't have any kind of leg to stand on at all. But they are still using that law as an excuse for what they did. So they're saying he was targeted because he ran when somebody called the police. And I already explained like how he didn't have anything in his possession. He was jogging through the neighborhood, and being black while jogging shouldn't be a cause for suspicion. And let's say, even if this brother was actually suspicious, like even if he was in their house stealing stuff, that did not give those people a right to hunt that brother down and kill that brother like he was an animal. They didn't have the right to serve as judge, jury, and executioner. If he was committing a crime, he should have been entitled to a trial by a jury of his peers instead of lynching at the hands of these white racist bastards. Oh, R said that you've been registered for 25 years and you haven't received a summons. Wow. That's really crazy. Oh, somebody said that he did talk about the case, but he didn't spend much time talking about it. And I'm referring to Kwame Brown because he thinks it'd be an easy case. And I think that it should be, but you never know, man. These juries are unpredictable, especially all white jury in the South. You never know what they're going to say or how they're going to decide the case. Yeah, so Def Rocker asked if Ahmaud Arbery had a mental impairment. I don't know all the details about that, and that's something that I want to find out more about. Like, I'm curious as to what those records actually said. I haven't read them, but the fact of the matter is, a court decided that that evidence should be suppressed. A court decided that that evidence was prejudicial and therefore like it wasn't relevant in the decision making process, in terms of whether or not these men committed a crime. Yeah, so I hear this whole point about not running from the police. I mean, not running. First of all, like that makes sense, like when you're dealing with the police, but we're not talking about the police here. We're talking about some random white racist people that decided to act as if they are the police. That's what we're talking about here. In a state that has a long history of lynching black people. That's what we're talking. There's a context to this. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. For those of you who are watching this on a playback, I'm really interested in hearing from you. I want to know, what do you think about this case? Have you been following this trial? What are your thoughts about it? Do you think there will be justice in this case? So with that, please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. That's very important because a lot of my subscribers are not seeing my videos for whatever reason. It may not be showing up on their news feed, because how in the hell can I have over 9,000 subscribers and only a few hundred views? I know that the content is on point, but anyway, so hit that notification bell. Peace and blessings. Have a great weekend, everybody. And I may be back a little bit later with another live stream. Peace.